The lion people followed the ape scent to a farm. The sun was setting. The apes were busy harvesting, tearing through the crops without care. The scent of trampled crops, broken stalks, and stolen harvest filled the air. The apes moved without urgency, their long arms swinging lazily as they ripped fruit from trees, stuffing their mouths with the spoils of their unchecked greed. Their laughter echoed through the farmland, mocking the silent cries of the farmers who watched in terror from the safety of the trees, too afraid to confront the beasts that had stripped them of their year's labor. The lion people watched from a distance, their eyes burning with anger. Shumba, their leader, turned to his warriors. "This is what Naraka has called us to do," he said, his voice low and steady. "The gods are with us. May they guide your claws and teeth." With a roar, Shumba charged into the fields. The apes froze, stunned. Where had these lions come from? Why were they attacking? The lions moved fast, their claws slashing and teeth snapping. Father and son fought side by side, their attacks fierce and unrelenting. The apes swung their long arms, but the lions were too quick, too strong. The fields echoed with snarls, screams, and the sound of bodies hitting the ground. An ape with long, sinewy arms swung wildly at Shumba, its strength immense, but the lion chief was faster. He ducked beneath the strike and delivered a brutal swipe across its midsection, sending it tumbling to the ground, gasping for breath. Another ape grabbed a thick wooden staff, bringing it down in an attempt to crush Paka's skull. Paka rolled to the side, the force of the blow cracking the earth where he had stood. He leaped up and raked his claws across the ape's face, sending it howling in agony. The apes, though powerful, were no match for the speed and discipline of the lions. Within minutes, the field was a graveyard. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. One ape, barely alive, stumbled into the village. Babara, the ape leader, stared in shock. The ape was covered in deep, bloody wounds. "What happened?" Babara demanded. "Where are the others?" The ape choked, struggling to speak. "Gone, all gone, the lions, Shumba." He gasped before collapsing. Babara's mind raced. Why were the lions attacking now? This was far from Shumba's territory. What had brought him here? Babara knew the legends of Shumba well. He was not a foe to take lightly. Babara called his most trusted soldier. "Take a team," he ordered. "Find out what happened to the others. Bring them back, and find out why Shumba is here. Report to me as soon as you know." Babara was cautious. A war with Shumba would cost too much, but if Shumba was interfering with his plans, he couldn't ignore it. That would be an insult, one he wouldn't tolerate. He looked down at the wounded ape, struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, Babara raised his spear and drove it into the ape's chest. There was no room for weakness in his ranks. As the sun disappeared, Babara stood in the quiet village, his mind racing. Shumba had made his move. Now it was Babara's turn. Akina hurried back home, her heart still pounding from her encounter with Lulenga. The sun had set. The air felt heavy, and every step she took seemed to echo in the quiet village. As she approached the homestead, she saw Chipo sitting outside, waiting. Her daughter's silhouette was barely visible in the dim light, but Akina could feel her piercing eye even before she spoke. "What took you so long, Mother?" Chipo asked, her voice calm but laced with suspicion. "And where is your clay pot?" She tilted her head, her eyes dropping to Akina's empty hands. Akina froze. She had been so caught up in her thoughts that she hadn't even realized she'd left the pot behind. Her mind raced for an excuse. It broke," she said quietly, avoiding Chipo's piercing stare. Chipo's eyes narrowed. "It broke," she repeated, her tone dripping with disbelief. "You've never broken a pot in your life, Mother. Not once." Akina's heart skipped a beat. Chipo was too observant, too clever. She forced a weak smile. "Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there?" But Chipo wasn't buying it. She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I know your secret, Mother," she said, her voice low and steady. Akina's breath caught in her throat. She turned to face her daughter, her eyes wide with panic. "What do you mean you know my secret? Have you been following me, Chipo?" Chipo didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied her mother's face, noting the fear that flickered in her eyes. She didn't actually know anything. Not yet. But she could see she had struck a nerve, and if she pushed a little harder, maybe she could uncover the truth. "Well, here's the thing, Mother," Chipo said, her voice calm but firm. "If you don't want me to tell Father about your secret, you'll have to do something for me." Akina's stomach twisted. "Do what for you, Chipo?" she asked, her voice trembling with desperation. Chipo smirked, sensing her mother's unease. "I don't want to sleep in my room. Father fixed the door, but I need 1 more week. Can you make that happen?" Akina stared at her daughter, her mind racing. How much did Chipo know? Had she been following her? Was she bluffing? She couldn't tell. But the thought of Jabali finding out the truth was too much to bear. "Very well, Chipo. If that's what it takes, then you can have your week." Chipo's smile widened, but inside her curiosity burned brighter than ever. She had only been bluffing, but it had worked, and now she was more determined than ever to uncover her mother's secret. Secrets had power, and Chipo was ready to seize it with both hands. Jabali arrived home just minutes later. Akina, still at the fire, heard his voice outside. "Chipo, is your mother back?" "Yes, Father," Chipo answered casually, glancing toward the hut. Jabali lingered for a moment, hesitating. There was something he wanted to ask but couldn't quite bring himself to. Then, clearing his throat, he finally said, "Has a man been here while I was gone?" Chipo frowned, thinking. Her mind flickered to a memory, the day Paka had come to the house. That day, a man had come looking for her mother. He had stood at the entrance, hesitant before running off. She had seen that same man at the market the day her mother fell and hit her head. Could the two have known each other? Was he the reason Akina fell in the first place? Chipo's lips curled slightly. She was onto something, but she wasn't ready to share it yet. "No, Father. No one came," she said with an innocent smile. Jabali narrowed his eyes slightly, studying her. Something about her tone made him pause. He knew his daughter well. When she was hiding something, she always had that same playful, knowing smile. But was she just playing one of her games? Or did she really know something? Deciding not to push, he sighed and stepped inside. At the fire, Akina was stirring the last of the food, the rich aroma filling the hut. She didn't turn when Jabali entered. She felt his presence behind her, heavy with suspicion, but she kept her focus on the meal. Soon they sat together, Jabali, Akina, and Chipo, eating in silence. 3 people, 3 separate thoughts, all tangled in unspoken questions. Chipo's mind raced. What secret does my mother have? And how does it connect to the man who came that day? Jabali chewed slowly, looking at his wife. Who has Akina been meeting with at the river? And why am I only finding out now? Akina kept her head down, her thoughts louder than the crackling fire. Am I even ready to meet Kapo in 2 days? Should I leave this alone? My family is becoming suspicious. What should I do? The silence was thick, pressing against them. No one spoke. After the meal, as they prepared to retreat to bed, Akina suddenly cleared her throat. "Jabali, my love," she said carefully. Jabali tensed. He recognized that voice. It was the voice she used when she was about to ask something delicate, something he probably wouldn't like. "What is it, Akina?" he asked, his voice calm but cautious. She hesitated, then forced the words out. "Can Chipo stay with us in the room a little longer? A week, perhaps?" Jabali's jaw tightened. There it was. She was avoiding him again, avoiding being alone with him. Had she been intimate with this man at the river? Had he touched her in ways that made Jabali seem dull in comparison? The thought twisted inside him like a knife. Had she let another man's hands roam the curves of her body, his lips tasting the places that only belonged to him? The possibility made his blood boil, his fingers twitch with a suppressed rage. Was that why she was keeping Chipo close? A barrier between them, a way to avoid his touch, his questions, his accusations. He inhaled deeply, exhaling through his nose. But instead of pressing her, Instead of arguing, he simply nodded. "If that's what you want, Akina," he said quietly. Akina blinked, slightly taken aback. She had expected resistance, a debate, something, but he had just let it go. She wasn't sure if that made her feel relieved or more uneasy. That night, neither Jabali nor Akina slept. Their minds wandered, spinning endless possibilities, crafting silent strategies. Each of them was planning their next move, and soon the truth would unravel. Kapo was deep in thought, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns in the sand, when her father's voice broke the stillness. "Just the person I was looking for," Lulenga said, stepping toward her. His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, something heavy. Kapo looked up, her expression instantly guarded. "What is it, father?" Lulenga crossed his arms, his piercing gaze fixed on her. "I know what you've been doing." Kapo's heart skipped a beat. "What exactly have I been doing?" she asked, her voice steady but her mind racing. "You've been following me." Kapo stiffened. She had only confided in Mamba about that. Had he betrayed her, or had her father truly known all along? "Who told you?" she demanded. Lulenga smirked. "I am the king. I know everything." Kapo smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. "Well, if you were open with me, I wouldn't have to follow you." Lulenga exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Some things I need time to process before I can share them." Kapo's eyes narrowed. "It's about my mother, isn't it?" She saw the slight shift in his expression, the flicker of hesitation. Now he had her full attention. "Yes," Lulenga admitted. Kapo's breath hitched. "Who is the woman you've been meeting by the riverbank? Is that my mother?" Lulenga swallowed hard. He had wanted this conversation to go differently, to ease her into the truth. But Kapo was direct, unyielding. "Yes," he said finally. "That is your mother." Kapo inhaled sharply, as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. "You made it sound like my mother was gone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "All these years she was alive, living in the village, a human." The truth unraveled before her, and yet it was too much to process. She had suspected it, but to hear it confirmed, it shook her to her core. Lulenga nodded solemnly. "A lot happened before you were born, Kapo. Things I cannot fully explain. I should have told you the truth sooner, but I was afraid. I didn't know how to tell you. I wasn't ready to face that part of my past." Kapo's fists clenched. "Why now?" she asked bitterly. "Because you were already finding out on your own," Lulenga admitted. "I thought it was best you hear it from me." Kapo's voice was ice. "Why did she leave me?" Lulenga's throat tightened. "She didn't leave you, Kapo." "Then why wasn't she there?" Kapo's eyes glistened with tears. "Why did she abandon me with you?" Lulenga's shoulders tensed. He had hoped she wouldn't ask that, at least not yet. "She didn't abandon you," he said softly. "I never gave her the chance to see you." Silence. Kapo's breath came out in a sharp exhale, disbelief washing over her. "What?" Lulenga closed his eyes for a brief moment before forcing himself to say it. "I took you from her." Kapo's world spun. "So you stole me from her?" she asked, her voice breaking. Lulenga's face fell. "Yes," he whispered, "and I am not proud of it." Kapo turned away, her mind a storm of emotions. For years she had longed for her mother, imagining a woman who had disappeared from her life by fate or tragedy or some cruel twist of destiny. But no, her mother hadn't left. Her father had taken her away. She thought of her mother, of what she might be like. Would she recognize her? Would she accept her? Would she love her? Would she even know how to love her mother back? Lulenga watched his daughter, seeing the conflict in her eyes. He felt a deep pang of guilt. If only he had made better choices, she wouldn't be facing this storm of emotions now. "I'm sorry I never told you," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I'm sorry I lied to you." Kapo wanted to scream at him, to tell him she would never forgive him for keeping this secret for so long, but the desperation in his eyes broke her heart. Instead, she whispered, 2 days. 2 days, Lulenga assured her. Kapo stepped forward and embraced her father, her arms wrapping tightly around him. Despite everything, he was still her father, the one who had raised her, protected her, and loved her. Their bond was unbreakable, even in the face of hidden truths. As they held each other, Kapo felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a glimmer of hope. In 2 days, she would meet her mother. But what would that mean for her? For her father? For their family? Lulenga held her tightly, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth. The war with the fish people loomed on the horizon, and now his daughter was about to face a personal battle of her own. He didn't want to let her go. Every moment felt precious because in a world filled with uncertainty, nothing was promised, not even tomorrow. A loud horn echoed through the village of the snake people, its deep resonant sound cutting through the quiet of the day. The horn was a signal. Outsiders had arrived. Amina, seated on her throne, straightened up, her curiosity piqued. She wasn't expecting any visitors. Who could it be? The doors to the great hall swung open, and a familiar face stepped inside. Amina's eyes widened in surprise. "Ziva," she said, a smile spreading across her face. What a pleasant surprise. Ziva, a tall and imposing figure, bowed his head respectfully. "Queen Amina," he greeted her. "I see you have settled in well." He glanced around the hall, taking in the snake people's village. It was clear he hadn't come for a casual visit. "It's good to see you, Ziva," Amina said, her tone warm but cautious. "I am curious, though. What brings you so far from home?" Ziva didn't waste time with small talk. He cut straight to the point. "The fish people," he said, his voice grave. "They've become rogue. They've been pillaging village after village, recruiting more to their cause. They're growing stronger, and they threaten to destroy everything we've built." Amina's smile faded. She had heard whispers of the fish people's rise, but she hadn't realized how dire the situation had become. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said carefully. "How can we help?" Ziva looked her straight in the eye, his expression serious. "We indeed need your help. We need you to fight alongside us." A gasp rippled through the room. The snake people had just come out of a brutal war with the hunters. They had lost many of their own, and the thought of entering another conflict, even alongside an ally, was almost too much to bear. Ziva continued, his voice steady but urgent. "I know your people have suffered losses. I know asking for your help now is a heavy burden. But my people need you. Our world needs you. This threat must be neutralized. I'm not here to demand anything, Queen Amina. I'm here to ask." Amina sat back, her mind racing. She understood the weight of Ziva's request. As a leader, her duty was to protect her people. But sometimes protection meant forming and keeping alliances, even if it meant stepping back into the fray. She took a deep breath, then nodded. "Please stay," she said. "I will speak to my council. We will have an answer for you by tomorrow." Ziva bowed his head again, a gesture of gratitude. "Thank you, Queen Amina. If you have good ale, I will gladly stay." "We have good drink," she said with a smile. As Ziva and his entourage were led to their quarters, Amina remained on her throne, the weight of the crown pressing heavily on her. This decision would not be an easy one. The snake people were weary, their hearts still healing from the last war. But if the fish people were as dangerous as Ziva claimed, could they afford to stand by and do nothing? Amina told Kwame to gather the council. There would be a meeting the next morning. The time for deliberation had come. The fate of her people and perhaps the entire underwater world hung in the balance. That night, as the village slept, Amina stood on the edge of the water, staring out into the dark depths. This was her favorite place to think, where the waves whispered secrets and the moonlight painted the world in silver. But tonight, her mind was far from calm. The weight of Ziva's request pressed heavily on her shoulders. The decision to join the war against the fish people would change everything for her people. She couldn't afford to make the wrong choice. As she gazed at the moon's reflection dancing on the water, the surface rippled. A figure emerged, sleek and powerful, water cascading off his broad shoulders. It was Ziva. She hadn't realized he was there the whole time. His silhouette was sharp against the moonlight, his muscular frame glistening as he rose from the depths. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She stared, perhaps a little too long, before quickly looking away. Ziva was almost beside her when she finally spoke, her voice slightly unsteady. "I didn't realize you were there, I didn't see you." Ziva smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You couldn't sleep either." "No," Amina admitted, crossing her arms over her chest. "I don't sleep much these days." "You and me both," Ziva said, his voice low. "It's hard to rest when so much is at stake." Amina nodded, her eyes drifting back to him. She couldn't help but notice the way his body moved, the strength in his frame. It had been a long time since she had seen a man like this, so confident, so powerful. The thought sent a shiver through her, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to entertain in a long time. Ziva stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Would it be terrible if I kissed you?" he asked, his voice soft but bold. Amina's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected such brazenness from him. For a moment, she was at a loss for words. Her mind raced, torn between the pull of desire and the weight of her responsibilities. "It would not be terrible," she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But it would be a bad idea." Ziva tilted his head, his eyes searching hers. "Why?" Amina swallowed, her pulse betraying her. The night air was cool, but her skin felt flushed. She had always been disciplined, always kept her emotions in check. But something about Ziva's presence, his confidence, his unwavering gaze, unraveled the control she prided herself on. She turned her eyes back to the water, trying to compose herself. "We have a war to fight, Ziva. This is not the time for distractions." Ziva chuckled, the sound deep and knowing. "That's the thing about war, Amina. It reminds us of how fragile everything is, how short our time can be." He tilted his head, studying her. "Is it really so wrong to want something, someone, before the world changes again?" Amina inhaled sharply. He was right in a way. Tomorrow was never promised, but she had built her reputation on restraint, on being untouchable, on never letting anyone get close enough to see the vulnerabilities she carried. She turned back to face him, finding his eyes locked onto hers. "You are playing with fire, Ziva," she said, wanting to lighten the mood. He grinned. "Maybe I want to burn." A shiver ran down her spine, but she held firm. "We need clear minds. We need to be focused. You and I, we are leaders first." Ziva searched her face, then nodded slowly. "Then tell me to walk away, Amina. Tell me, and I will." She hesitated. The words were on her tongue, but they refused to come out. The weight of centuries of tradition, the ghosts of ancestors who had built the alliance she now upheld, whispered caution in her ear. And yet, standing here under the moonlight with Ziva so close, she found herself at war with something far more personal than any battlefield she had ever known. Her silence was an answer in itself. Ziva reached up, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. His fingers were warm, calloused from battle, yet impossibly gentle. "I will not press you," he murmured. "But if you ever decide that a bad idea is worth pursuing, you know where to find me." With that, he stepped back, his presence lingering even as he turned and disappeared into the darkness. Amina let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The water before her rippled under the moonlight, as restless as she felt inside. And that, my dear tribe members, brings us to the end of yet another thrilling chapter in our Mermaids, Lion People and Witches series. I hope you enjoyed the ride as much as I did. Shumba and his warriors struck the apes mid-harvest, their attack swift and relentless. But Babara is not one to stand idly by. He is prepared to investigate, fight, and defend his honor at all costs. Meanwhile, Jabali and Chipo have grown increasingly suspicious of Akina. Something doesn't add up, and they're ready to set traps and uncover the truth. What secrets is Akina hiding? Beneath the waves, Lulenga finally reveals the truth to Kitapo, her mother's identity, a secret long buried. In just 2 days, Kitapo will stand face to face with the woman she has dreamed of meeting her entire life. But will reality match the dream? And in the depths of the forest, Ziva ventures into the realm of the snake people, seeking their aid in the coming battle. But in doing so, he stirs something primal, something Amina hoped she would never have to confront again. Join me next time as we journey deeper into the villages, the rivers, and the hidden caves. Until then, stay wild, stay curious, and stay ready for what's to come. A heartfelt welcome to J.A. Sanchez Martinez, MD, for joining the tribe. I truly appreciate you taking your place at the inner table. Your support means the world, and I'm grateful you've chosen to be part of this journey. Thank you for choosing to be part of the Savannah. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. To those of you who have already joined the tribe, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are truly the heartbeat of this channel. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.